On October 26, 2022, Elon Musk bought Twitter, but he didn't just buy it, he made sure the whole world knew. He literally walked into Twitter HQ carrying a sink. Then just days later, he did something even crazier, fired 80% of the company. We're talking over 6,000 employees gone. So what happened next? Well, nothing. The app didn't crash, the world didn't end, it was still the same Twitter, except now wastes billions of dollars less than before. This situation proves something quite peculiar. Maybe companies don't actually need as many employees as they think, especially when research suggests the average employee only works for about 3 hours of their entire working day. Elon saw this becoming a bigger problem in America, so now he's taking on the US government. Recently, Elon Musk was officially named a special employee of the US government. His job? Leading something called the Department of Governmental Efficiency, otherwise known as Doge. Not the meme coin, but a part of the US designed to cut wasteful spending wherever it exists. Elon is known for unexpected moves, and recently, he did something insane. But before I tell you this, I know my channel's pretty new, but 85.7% of you watching this video haven't subscribed yet. I'd be grateful if you took the time out of your day to press that button. But anyways, Elon sent an email to 2.4 million federal employees, asking them one simple question: what did you do for work last week? And they discovered something shocking. Over 1 million government workers didn't respond. President Donald Trump said these 1 million employees are certainly at risk of losing their jobs. To be honest, Doge discovered some pretty wild things about US government spending. Apparently 21 million people over 100 years of age are still receiving social security payments. This is money straight from the taxpayer's pocket. When you realize the oldest living person is a 116-year-old, 2,000 people over the age of 200 getting free government money doesn't make sense at all. There's also an entire website keeping track of every cut made by Elon. Doge just cancelled $100 million worth of empty office space leases. Why? Because people working remotely made them pointless to keep. And did you know about the $40 billion a year spent on government credit cards? I don't know why this is so much, but I think some folks clearly need to speak to Caleb Hammer.
You have more credit cards than anyone's ever had on this show.
Ooh, do I? Oh,
It's not a good thing.
not a good thing.
A lot of money is being wasted in every direction. In just 6 weeks, Doge has supposedly helped save the US government $105 billion. The reason this is being done is to reduce America's debt and ultimately save the taxpayers' money, because all this money is being wasted on interest to service this debt. Imagine hearing your tax contributions are paying for empty office space. Nice. Anyways, for the Doge boys, there's a long way left to go. But if they succeed, the government will never run the same way again. They want to get rid of $1 trillion worth of spending every year. Pretty ambitious, I gotta say. And they even want to give some of this back to every tax-paying American. The White House is looking into the idea of giving out a one-time $5,000 check to every taxpayer, which is roughly equal to 20% of the total savings targeted by Doge. Alright, so now let's get to the big question. Are 1 million people actually losing their jobs? Well, here's what's really happening. So far, Doge has come in hot. In February alone, 63,583 federal jobs were cut. That's already a significant number, but nowhere near 1 million. What about the actual people losing their jobs? A man who gave 20 years of his life to the US military got fired from Veteran Affairs by email. He said, "I gave 20 years to my country, and when I saw a termination from my federal job, it really felt like I was alone." A White House advisor commented on the situation, saying,
"We care about veterans tremendously. I mean, that's something the president has always cared about. But at the same time, we have taxpayer dollars. We have a fiscal responsibility to use taxpayer dollars to pay people that actually work. That doesn't mean that we forget our veterans by any means, but perhaps they're not fit to have a job at this moment or not willing to come to work."
With ambitious projects come lots of obstacles. And Doge has had its fair share of mistakes. Mistakes like these aren't just headlines. They're real people's lives being thrown into the chaos. Imagine waking up one morning and seeing an email saying, "Hey, you no longer have a job." And as we've seen, not all of these decisions were final. Some people were even rehired. Almost 1,000 employees from the Department of Health were phone fired, but hours later were given their jobs back. Some employees from the National Nuclear Security Administration, which oversees nuclear weapons, were fired. Then they tried to bring them back, but the hiring agencies had, and I quote, no good way to contact them. So, how many jobs are left to cut? Analysts at RBC estimate 200,000 to be a likely number for the total layoffs coming from Doge. Those working in areas of national security, immigration, and public safety are safe from the cuts, as you'd expect, because they're pretty sensitive areas. But most at-risk jobs are people working for the IRS, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Defense. Each of these are expected to shed another 5,000 jobs apiece, meaning at least 15,000 cuts are on the way. So it's not quite a million, but it would bump the unemployment rate in America up to 4.1% from the current 4% level. While this could be reassuring, we're forgetting about how Doge affects everyone else with a job. There's still a major shift happening in the US economy. Big companies outside of the government have already started their own versions of layoffs. It is not just AI to blame. Microsoft and Meta have both said they'll make performance-based job cuts. We're starting to see strategic moves, not because companies are struggling, but instead to improve efficiency. What does this mean for employees? Let's be real, nobody wants to lose their livelihood. But when people see thousands of employees getting fired, they start working harder. The moment a person in the office gets fired, something shifts. People become more productive, they show up on time, and they answer emails faster. Basically, they avoid mistakes at all costs. It's not because they suddenly love their jobs. It's out of fear. I saw this firsthand. There was a time when I worked at a private company where a huge round of layoffs were coming. It wasn't official yet, but everyone could sense something. People who used to slack off actually started doing their job. And just like that, the same folks who weren't even trying a few months ago were now treating their job like it was life or death. As brutal as it sounds, this is the power of fear in the workplace. For decades, federal employees have had some of the safest jobs in America. Government layoffs were rare. Previously, all federal workers were guaranteed levels of due process, something that doesn't exist in the private sector. You could just get fired like that. So before, incentives to work harder never really existed, until now, where Doge is making things more like the private sector. You have to prove your worth, or risk losing your job. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for the economy, because firing 200,000 people that are allegedly doing nothing makes the 800,000 who are left work twice as hard because they're scared of losing their jobs. There's a big problem with this though. The government can make people work harder, but it doesn't want to pay them more. It's like expecting a McDonald's worker to grind like a Wall Street banker, but still pay them minimum wage. If the best and most ambitious government employees realize they can make way more money in the private sector, they will leave. And the only ones left will be those who aren't good enough to get hired elsewhere. Research shows that the average government employee earns about 25% less than workers with the same job in the private sector. There's clearly a massive incentives problem. I mean, why work twice as hard only to get the same salary? Anyways, Elon has proved himself to be quite the agent of chaos. Whether it was buying Twitter and firing everyone in his sights, or now helping make the US government more efficient. And yes, jobs are being cut, but not nearly as much as people are afraid of. The idea of 1 million layoffs is more a headline than reality. Instead, the real focus is cutting waste at a bigger scale. Rather than just firing employees, they're halting unnecessary contracts and ending grant programs. 2,334 terminated contracts alone are responsible for $8 billion in savings, with the cut grants covering another $10 billion. Most of the cuts aren't coming from people, rather large agency contracts and government grants. But one thing is clear, the times of easy government jobs are definitely over.